internet 2 words, monkey ring bearer.
Okay, and can we have the rings, please? Jada. Jada doesn't want to give rings away. She wants to keep the rings. That's because she wants to marry you guys. Got them?
Now, you bet that's weird. Yeah, well, that's nothing compared to the rest of the stuff we're going to be looking at today. Today, we're looking at somebody you might have heard of that you can't stop hearing about because you can't leave your house. That is on the front page of Netflix, and you can't escape him. His name's Joe Exotic. Now, don't worry, I'm going to give a little TLDR, but I would recommend you watch the Netflix documentary. Also, we're going to be covering a couple other characters over the next couple of weeks being trapped inside. So do stay on the lookout for that. But today we're talking about Joe Exotic, the titular Tiger King. Now, Joe is an interesting guy. Joe, aside from being a felon, stand-up guy, I'm planning on voting for him in the next election, which, by the way, he did run for governor of Oklahoma. Joe is a Tiger King because he's bred tigers pretty much his entire life. He comes from a zoo background, his parents were from a zoo-like background, they owned an exotic pet shop. His brother was involved before his passing. What makes Joe interesting is not the fact that he breeds tigers, but that he's a gay gun-toting zoo owner who also happens to have the weirdest hard-on hate boner for a lady named Carol Baskin, who, as my lawyers have informed me, definitely didn't kill her husband.
Carol Baskin down at Big Cat Rescue. It was all part of Carol Baskin's plan with Peter, the Carol Baskin. Carol Baskin is so influential that Carol Baskin and Carol Baskin, I consider that bitch to be one of the biggest terrorists in the exotic animal world right now.
Now, as I said, Joe is in prison because Joe is a felon. Joe Exotic was caught with tons of charges. And he's basically in prison until he grows old and dies now. Interestingly enough, that we might live in a timeline where the President of the United States decides to pardon Joe Exotic.
A show on Netflix called Tiger King.
Yeah.
And the
22 years for what? What did he do?
he allegedly hired someone to murder an animal rights activist, but he said that he didn't do that, and he was.
You think he didn't do it? Are you on his side?
Well, I'm a reporter.
Are you recommending a pardon?
No, I'm not advocating
As a
anything.
reporter, you're not allowed to do that. You'd be criticized by these. Would you recommend a pardon?
I'm not weighing in on Tiger
I
King.
don't think you would. I don't think you would. Go ahead. You have a question? I'll take a look. Is that Joe Exotic? That's Joe Exotic.
But who knows what'll happen next in the grand story of Joe, because it definitely doesn't seem like it's done, and that the Tiger King might actually return. And actually continue with another cast of characters. But the documentary left out a lot of Joe's social media. They covered it a little bit, but it's certainly an interesting ride. A weirdness hole that just does not stop giving. Let's see, what does Joe do? Yeah, he's got plenty of threats to Carol Baskin on here.
I consider that bitch to be one of the biggest terrorists in the exotic animal world right now.
This just makes me wonder, what kind of weird real humans are out there on the internet that I just haven't discovered? God, I gotta go on another expedition for one of them. Lucky for Joe, somebody's taken over his social media in order to make sure that the Tiger King gets verified and stays out there. And I don't know who runs it, but they're Twitter genius. To all interested, I cannot get verified on Twitter, been trying for days. Hey everyone, 2 more days I will be out of quarantine. Can't wait to see all the tweets. Thanks for the love and support. Hashtag Free Joe Exotic, @Tiger King, stay safe. Who is running this Twitter account, you ask? Well, this is very interesting. They just tweet every day about how you should watch the fucking documentary. But I'm pretty sure this is run by a person. Guys, those of you that want to free Joe Exotic, I understand you feel bad for the guy, and there's a part of you that kind of likes him and likes the train wreck of a human being. But let's realize that this man did commit crimes. That did happen. It happened. We're just gonna let him go because we like him? Well, apparently 6ix9ine's out of jail, so that might actually be the case. So, assumedly, this is Joe's husband, his 3rd husband that's tweeting from this account because of a very lovely and loving picture they have together that's very wholesome and sweet. Talking about how Joe is being moved because he's in quarantine, and then he says, "Sorry about the caps. I am fucking blind." Don't know how the caps help at all. What are you typing in Braille? Now, Joe Exotic has a YouTube channel where all of his crap has been posted. Pretty much everything that you see in the documentary was either from there or whatever Rick Kirkman was able to, you know, save. Rick Kirkman is a producer. There's a lot of characters in this.
Hey, I'd like to welcome you to a most unusual wedding. In our society today, no wedding is really normal. Our diverse nation has blended together so many ideas of what it means to be married. And
that's beautiful. By the way, if you watch that, it's their entire wedding. All of it. Don't know how long it's going to be up there anymore, so please go watch it, because it's like watching an Eric Andre skit that goes on way too long. You know when you pass that barrier between uncomfortable and funny? Yeah, it's like somewhere in that realm. It's like they have like this most backyard redneck lover cake. It's hilarious. Look at it. It's what the fuck? And I'm sorry, I just can't get over the fact that this documentary just completely skipped over the monkey ring bearer and this weird, awkward series of events that led to this monkey giving over the rings. Most of it is just a bunch of walking around in like Bass Pro Shops. And then obviously it's the wedding ceremony that is just, oh my, it is uncomfortable. But don't worry, Joe puts his likeness everywhere. And by that, I mean, he literally will not turn down an opportunity to appear in an ad. In fact, what makes this so incredibly hilarious is that he just uploads commercials from local businesses to the YouTube channel.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you like pizza, pasta, or chicken Alfredo, I can promise you, Zooters is the place you want to stop. It's right in front of the Greater Wynnewood Exotic Animal Park. You don't have to enter the zoo to sit down and have some of the world's famous pizza, a cold beer, something else to drink, and sit down in an atmosphere next to tigers that you have never experienced anywhere in the world.
Yes, because when I want to promote my pizza restaurant, Joe Exotic is the guy I want to be my spokesperson. This is like getting Papa John's post saying the N-word, like to promote your pizza business. Papa John's is one day, hey, Papa John's might actually have been right about the day of reckoning. This is Papa John's fault. That's why we're all stuck inside. So here's a weird behind the scenes that they posted on Joe's YouTube channel in 2013. Behind the scenes, Rachel Starr photo shoot with Joe Exotic at the GW Zoo. Now, aside from being a mouthful, which I'm sure that Miss Rachel Starr is familiar with, you're probably wondering who Rachel Starr is. Now, I had to Google this, but Rachel Starr is apparently an American pornographic actress. This is brilliant. You want to take your kids to the same zoo where they had a porn star? Yeah, where they had a porn star take a photo shoot. That one wasn't even the funniest, right? Apparently the GW Zoo has an ongoing working relationship with a lot of model agencies, including ones based out of Oklahoma.
Oh, here, kitty, kitty. Oh, mama's got some treats for you. Oh, here, kitty, kitty.
You know, I know people say I look like that guy from the Trailer Park Boys, but like, geez, is this like a fucking gag? I feel like this is the longest, like, industry plant, like, setup nonsense. I can't believe this is real. Now, if you guys watch the documentary, you know why doing stuff like this is very bad, and why you shouldn't be doing things like this, and why, you know, these people are crazy. But don't worry, there's plenty more than this. Just a lot more. How about Joe Exotic uploading a high schooler's documentary on him to his own YouTube channel?
Mission with this place.
You know, we have several missions. One is, you know, to give misplaced animals a place to live, you know, for the rest of their life. We breed. We're part of a very intense species survival plan to make sure that we're doing this correct and the information that we put out there is true. And you know, you even as a student and a person who lives in Oklahoma, probably will never go to Africa.
Right.
or India or anywhere where these animals are from. So, you know, the biggest thing is, and one of the biggest things we combat out there with the animal rights people is they say that if I get a baby tiger out and let you cuddle it and play with it, that's abuse, okay? All right, but having a baby tiger, shut your radios off. Having a baby tiger in your lap will make you understand while I'm talking to you and make you appreciate saving the rainforest and these animals' habitat much more than if I sit in a classroom, because I used to tour, you know, doing magic for 9 years.
Now allow me to say that this documentary ain't nothing special. I'm sorry, I understand they're in high school and there's a large majority of them who might actually watch me, but guys, do you realize what you did? By the way, I should mention this one is also unbearably uncomfortable.
It's pretty much goes back to the scam thing, you know. It's the same way with PETA, you know. Their kill rate last year was 73%. Out of every dog they took in, they only adopted out 60. And that's sending them to other shelters. That's not adopting them themselves. They pawned them off on other animal shelters, okay? And they killed 73%. I have a no kill rate, period. Okay, but I'm the bad guy.
Now, if I'm going to be harsh to high schoolers now, I should also say that this has the hallmarks of the we didn't know what to film for our film class film students. You know, the ones that never show up or do anything on time, because this is just a 33-minute long, some odd, like, interview with Joe Exotic about all these questions and useless, inane bullshit. Ironically, for what it's worth, these girls were ahead of the curve when it came to doing a documentary on the one, the only Tiger King Joe Exotic. Some of my favorite moments with Joe are when he records events that he has with the USDA. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar, the USDA pretty much does all of the federal regulating of private zoos, making sure that animals' enclosures and whatever they have are up to code, that those animals are safe and sound. Basically, they're the guys that go to Joe and say, you need to build this fence higher so the tiger doesn't come over and kill people, or you need to make sure that you feed these tigers more so that way, you know, they don't eat you alive, or some other things. They're basically the people that are the regulators. They're the people on the ground that go to private zoos and say, hey, that's bad. And then, you know, that's how you end up with the feds involved and how everything in this entire documentary got started. But here's what's interesting, is that you can really see Joe's incompetence here.
Back in the motorhome, and I know that you have fans and you have ways of heating the RV.
But do you know what his body temperature needs to be?
I was told that above 85.
His body temperature?
No, for external temperature. That's a very minimum for those animals. It's what we've been told by our
it needs to be 85 as far as hot or below it?
So a minimum of 85 degrees.
Do you know what the ambient temperature was when you were inspecting it?
It was 81.
So why is that bad?
And so the point is that it's a very, very small animal that's being exposed to temperatures, and that animal cannot thermoregulate. And then it's also the potential for the disease.
Joe, I understand that the lady doesn't work with animals and that you work with the animals, right? But what they do is regulations. So they understand what needs to be the minimum requirements for animals and what needs to be done so that animals have good enclosures. You don't need to be an expert in animals to know what a zoo should have for safety reasons for both animals and people. Believe it or not, a biologist and a federal regulator can have overlapping knowledge, but that also means that a biologist can turn to a federal regulator and say, this is what the requirements are. And so guess what? That's how the USDA knows what kind of regulations there should be, because they asked people with degrees. So in this wonderful argument Joe has with the USDA lady, he wonders why she keeps saying that the tigers need to be kept at a certain degree, why these animals need to be kept at a certain temperature, because they're young, they're babies. They need to be incubated. Joe's like, but it's 81 degrees in there. Joe, how hard is it to get a heat lamp? You're like, I ain't getting a heat lamp. The feds, I ain't listening to them. Guys, trust me, I don't like the feds as much as the next guy. But when it push comes to shove, Just do what they say. It's so much easier. You want that, or do you want to just be in court forever for the rest of your life? No, okay? Let's pick and choose our battles here, all right? It's not worth it. Now, Carole Baskin is an interesting character and the arch nemesis of Joe Exotic, but Joe, for some reason, has been able to get along with his entire YouTube career and business without anybody at the platform going, hey, this guy is making death threats to a random lady in Florida.
Good evening, world. I'm Joe Exotic, and welcome to Saga 24 of the Little Cat Rescue Carol Ann story down there in Tampa, Florida. Now, don't forget my disclaimer. This is only an opinion of mine. It's not attached to any company, business, or anyone else, like I really give a shit.
Now, you might have noticed from some of these clips of Mr. Exotic that it looks like they were filmed on, like, VHS. That's probably because they fucking were. A lot of this, and I assume that most people haven't used this tech because it's a little old now and most of my audience is high schoolers to like freshmen in college, but there was this thing that allowed us to convert VHS to digital, right? And we would work with VHS cameras because, you know, can't work with film, that's expensive, so you work with tape. And then you transfer it in this big machine that looks like a really fancy computer. By that I mean it looks like your grandma's computer with the big bubble back. And then you transfer it into a digital format. It looks like ass, sounds like ass, and doesn't look like all the colors were sucked out of it. Basically the worst version of VHS you could imagine. That's what Joe's rolling with here. I cannot see it any other way. It literally looks like it's from the time before time. But don't worry, even Joe, after Joe's studio burnt down, he's still out here. He's still out here telling Carole Baskin he's gonna ruin her life. I bet you're wondering why Joe's studio burnt down. Please go watch the documentary. I swear to God, it totally wasn't definitely wasn't arson. Now, Dylan also runs the Instagram for Mr. Exotic because, you know, Mr. Exotic is in jail. Dylan, Joe's husband, is saying that this is not the end, that Jeff Lowe has to pay. And I bet you're wondering who Jeff Lowe is. Well, allow me to introduce you to another character. This man was involved possibly with the attempted murder and planning the conspiracy of Carole Baskin, allegedly. Just my opinion. My lawyers have informed me that Jeff Lowe is absolutely innocent. But what I can say is that Jeff Lowe picked a hot nanny so that way his miserable, miserable wife could also use the nanny to help raise their child. I wonder what he's doing with that hot nanny. Definitely Christian things. Can't imagine anything else. Did I mention there's swingers who go around in Las Vegas showing people tiger cubs so that way they can get them in bed to have sex with them? Yeah, that wasn't even the weirdest part. How about the part where the hitman sat in a bathtub? Yeah, I bet you don't remember that. Too fixated on Carole Baskin's simp of a husband. The one that's not dead, you know, the one that she didn't kill. I mean, she didn't kill the other one. Now, without getting too off track, Dylan was nice enough to provide us with information that Jeff Lowe might have entrapped Joe Exotic. What the fuck is this? This is beyond reason. Now, for some reason, people who are hillbillies, and you know, for what it's worth, I also will say that the hood rat community also does this as well, but we're not looking at them today. Today, we're looking at Mr. Lowe and his wife. There's a very good possibility that Jeff did entrap Joe, and there does seem to be evidence of that. But you know, because we're all criminal masterminds here, and Jeff Lowe is definitely a criminal mastermind, my opinion, of course, allegedly, these are the kind of people who would hire a $5,000 hitman to go take me out. Allegedly, it wouldn't happen, I swear. They're nice people. I met them last week, had dinner with them, and Andy Warhol. Honestly, for a dead guy, really talkative. Wouldn't expect them to hang out with rednecks. Point being is, here's what Jeff said. Just for the record, in the event that Joe and his merry men keep fucking with me, I will post the entire contents of the dump drive on Twitter under the name Exotic Joe. If Facebook puts me in Facebook jail for anything, I'll move this info to Twitter on that account. Joe is a fucking idiot to post anything about my sex life. I guess the hillbilly didn't know that I've been setting his ass up for almost a year. I'm loaded with knowledge. Try me, Joe. I will post every stinking video, sound and all. Now, aside from the fact that he sounds like a very angry hillbilly version of Keemstar, the hilarious part about this is that, according to that Facebook statement, Jeff Lowe, his entire reason for taking down Joe's entire life and empire and removing him from everybody that he loved in his life, was not for any noble means, but because he was upset that Joe went around and told people that Jeff swings. Which, as far as we know, Jeff does swing, and he hasn't said otherwise. Hell, he got a hot nanny, said it on the program, and then even said that, hey, I'm happy I got a hot nanny. Are you kidding me? Man, something about all these real masculine dudes that all have just the most fragile ego. Like between him and some other characters from the documentary, one who might actually be running a cult. Yeah, remember when this was about tigers? Like, I don't get what Jeff is getting on about here, because Jeff does do those things. He is proud of those things, and he's proud of all the pipe he lays on young women. Is it possible for his wife to be a cuck, or is it just him being an asshole? Look, now I have no evidence to support this, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that Jeff Lowe is more the corporal punishment type of guy, if you know what I mean. Now, as you can see from this, Joe Exotic and the weirdo cast of tiger people who all have weird, vain egos is not over. This is not over, it's definitely not. Now, I'll be interested to see what happens between these people, because they're all crazy and awful people, and I can say that because it's just my opinion, man, but they're horrendous. Now, I do remember a time when this was about, you know, making sure the animals were okay, and there does seem to be a part of Joe that definitely had that, and he became so obsessed with being famous that he fell away from that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm certain a lot of these people that love these big cats all do tons of conservation work, and that's fine, but just let's also realize all the awful things they're doing as well. You know, bringing in cubs to have them take pictures with people. There's tons of other things that are huge issues that the documentary covers that are definitely awful issues for animal rights. You know, it's just an awful situation all around. Not only are these bad people, and there's the possibility of, you know, somebody losing their life, but there's also the possibility of these animals never being able to be let out into the wild again, or, you know, just raising them for profit rather than what should be the ultimate goal of eventually releasing these tigers into the wild, or releasing some, because there's so many more tigers in captivity than there are in the wild. And it seems that these more or less these people are more obsessed with just taking pictures with them and using them as props, rather than recognizing them for the animals and the beauty of nature for what it truly is, and where it should be, nature. There's a lot of moving parts. I think the characters are all a lot more gray than some other people might say, but we'll be covering some other people in the future with a little bit more detail. I figured Joe Exotic's social media was a little bit interesting though, because there's some stuff that the documentary seemed to deliberately omit over other things to make a more cohesive story. I don't know if I said this recently, but documentaries are reality, but the reality through the perception of the filmmaker. So while they are realistic depictions of what's happened, they're realistic depictions from someone's perspective. So don't ever sit down and watch a documentary and think it's unbiased. They usually do have a lean there, okay? That's what I'm getting at. Now that I've shilled Tiger King enough, because those of you that didn't watch it sound really fucking confused now, you could watch that documentary on Netflix, because I will be covering Doc Antle and Jeff Lowe in the future with a bit more detail because they require it. Joe's been pretty much covered extensively. But if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so over on Patreon, where I release exclusive content about my life. And in particular, recently, I just uploaded a short little vodcast about everything regarding the coronavirus and myself, and some of the more economic impacts that are going to be happening because of this, and some economic impacts that I'm facing because of this. Not to mention, you also get early access to certain videos that I put up on the channel, longer form videos. You also get access to Patreon exclusive videos about things not particularly related to crazy people on the internet. So if you'd like to do that, please do help me out, and you know, stay healthy.
Step amazing.